Hello everybody, this is Karma Killed the Cat, and welcome to your 10th Lua tutorial. In this tutorial, we will be going over the generic for loop. But before we get started, a few things. One, sorry I haven't posted a video in like 2 or 3 weeks. I had midterms in school, so I was pretty busy over the last few weeks. And also other personal matters were getting in the way. But it's April vacation now, so I should have February vacation now. So I should have a good amount of time to record. So there shouldn't be another big 2 or 3 week gap like that, at least for a while. So the other thing, you've probably noticed I'm using a completely different text editor to run Lua. This is called Sublime Text 2. It's a lot better than, I think I was using Notepad++, or the one that came with Lua in the last tutorial. This is a lot better. It auto-indents for you, colors the text. It's great. The only problem is that you have to run the Lua file from the console, so you need to just put io.read here, and that will stop the console from closing once the program's ended, so you can see the output. So just an example, print 1, and then we'd save it, and then go to where the file is, and then you just hit open, and you get the output, and then you just type something in and the program closes. So that's all I need to talk about, so let's get started with the tutorial. So we went over the generic for loop very briefly in the last tutorial when I used it to initialize our vector3 class. Probably shouldn't have done that. I should have waited till we went over it in this tutorial, but we kind of saw what it did, but let's go over it in more depth. So what the generic for loop does is it's usually used to iterate through a table that has key value pairs instead of numerical pairs. So if you don't know what that means, this is a table with numerical pairs, or numerical values, or numerical keys. It took me a while to say that. So we just see t equals 1, 2, 3. The values in the tables don't have names, so they're automatically given numerical names. So this would be position 1, this would be position 2, and this would be position 3. Now a table with key value pairs is something like this. So 1 equals 1, 2 equals 2, and 3 equals 3. So each value in the table is given a name. So this is the key, and this is the value. So we know how to iterate through just a table with numerical pairs, or numerical keys, keep saying that wrong. You just do a normal numerical for loop, for I equals 1, the size of t, and then you just do whatever you want to do with that. But to iterate through a table with key value pairs is a little harder. So what we do is we say for k, comma v in, and then here you put a function. We're going to use the predefined function in Lua called pairs, and the parameter for this will be the table we want to iterate through, and then do and end. So the k and the v are the iterator values that will be used to iterate through the table, and this function is the function that's used to iterate through the table, and then we pass in the table we want to iterate through here. So most generic for loops will use the pairs function. There's also a function called iPairs, and I'll go over that very briefly, but even I'm not too clear on what iPairs does. But I will go over how to create your own iterator functions for the generic for loop, but 99% of the time you will use the pairs function. I don't think I've ever used anything else. So to use this loop, let's just print the keys and the values of the T2 table. So we'll print k, comma, v. So now we'll save this, and I have to go through the files because I accidentally closed this. So just find it and open, and we see 1, and it has the value 1, 3, and the value 3, and then 2, and the number 2. So the reason it's out of order like this is because Lua doesn't organize its tables by number. I think this is organized alphabetically. Yeah, it is. So by default, it will sort the table alphabetically, and there's a function, we won't go over it today, we'll go over it in the table library tutorial, which will be sometime in the future. I'm not sure when, but you can change how the table's sorted, but we'll go through that later. But just know that tables don't have any particular order when you use key value pairs by default, so you're not doing anything wrong if it shows up like this. It's how it's supposed to be. Alright, so now we're going to create a simple iterator function. So we'll make a new function, and we'll just call it iter, and it will take t as a parameter and end. And the t will be a table for the parameter. So this function is just going to loop through a numeric table. This probably won't be much help in real programming, obviously, but it's a good example. So we'll create a local variable, I equals 0. Oop, that's not a 0. Local I equals 0. And then we just return, and we'll return a new function. Doesn't need any parameters. And we'll say I equals I plus 1. And I'm just going to write this whole function on one line. You can do this in Lua. And then we will return t at position I. And end. So this is an iterator function. You see we just create a local variable called I and set it to 0. And then the function we return will save that local variable through multiple calls. So let's just say for we'll just change that to for v in iter t. We'll have to create a new table. So t equals 1, 2, 3, and we'll change this to print v. So if we save this and run it, we get 1, 2, 3. So I know this is pretty hard to understand. It took me a while to understand too, but you'll probably never use this. I've never used it before, and I'm making a game in Lua right now. So you'll usually just use pairs, and actually there are a few other functions you'll use, but we'll go over those later, and those are pretty easy to understand. So that's all for this tutorial, and see you in the next one.